Here we are with Lemar Daniels, head coach at of esports at Lourdes University in Ohio. Um, Thanks once again for agreeing to join us to talk a little bit about what you have going on at Lourdes.
Lourdes is actually I got started through WAU. While I was still at WAU, I knew I wanted to work in college athletics at some point. I initially was, for those who knew me back then, a pre-law student, um, but realized that athletics was just something that was a real big passion for me. So I knew I wanted to work in college sports. Got a taste of coaching with the volleyball team there as well, and then a game called Overwatch came out on my birthday, 2016. So I had just graduated. I was in the area for a year, and a friend of mine, we all know Nugget, Brandon, when he introduced me to Overwatch, and it kind of just blew up from there. So I went to grad school at Ohio University, got my MBA, and then got my master's of sports administration. Got both degrees in 2 years, and then I realized I wanted to work either in esports, coaching, or student athlete development, and I was trying to figure out which route I wanted to go, and I couldn't. So I found a job that lets me do all three. And what I get to do, I get to work in esports, I get to coach students, and I get to work with college athletes, which has always been the biggest passion of mine. So that's ultimately how I got to Lourdes. I graduated from Ohio University. A lot of my classmates were getting jobs in like LA and Chicago, and I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see where I'm going to end up. And then saw a job posting for Lourdes, which is actually back in my hometown. So ended up deciding it could be a good fit for me. Excited to come back home. Wasn't something I expected, but definitely something God had in plan for me, and I'm happy that I'm here.
That's awesome. And so you talked a little bit about how you got started. Talk a little bit, kind of backtrack a little bit, and share with the viewers your experience at WAU, working in athletics, being on multiple teams. Just kind of talk about how that has helped you in in this position.
Um, it helped me immensely. I was like, the camera's trying to focus me there. I started off one of the good things about I heard the saying one time while I was in grad school. A small college means big opportunities, and it was definitely that for WU. Um, I got the experience. I got the ability to work a lot hands-on immediately. Where if I was at a larger school, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. Whether it was working the scoreboard or working like at basketball games or soccer games or working the book at a volleyball game or helping on the website, the athletics website, or running intramurals, like being able to be like the person in charge of intramurals for a year and a half, like at a large university as a student. There's no way I'd be able to get that experience hands on, and I was definitely blessed to be able to do that. Also, definitely me being a college athlete. I was recruited initially for WU for the track team, um, and then ended up also when you run track, a lot of times you run cross country as well. And then got convinced by we Alejandra Campos. She convinced me to walk on to the acro team, and then volleyball came after that. So um, had also played soccer for a year. So I did like definitely like if I'm at a large university, I don't get a chance to do all these opportunities, whether it's playing or whether it's being involved on the administrative side, and all of that really fueled my passion. It's what really helped me, and definitely working alongside you, Coach Lyons, like in you being able to being willing to trust me to work on the website or to do some articles here and there, like all of that stuff definitely helped out PC as well, in the faith that he gave me, whether it was running intramurals or working on the table as well. All of that helped all together, so that when I applied for grad school, I was able to say, hey, I have all this experience behind me. Whereas some people are coming from bigger schools, I'm able to be like, yeah, well, I've done this all in my 5 years in college.
Yeah, and that's huge. I'm glad that you touched on that piece because I think for student athletes now, and I know that we're unfortunately we're in this pandemic that students aren't able to be on campus. But I think that you're the type of student athlete that really took advantage of their time during college, right?
Yeah.
Doing all of these things, um, and like you said, gaining this experience. The last question that I had, as far as for kind of your WAU experience, of course you spent a lot of time with Ben Johnson, head
Yeah.
coach Ben Johnson, for our Acro-Airs and volleyball team. When you talk about WAU athletics, um, Ben Johnson is a name that
Mhm.
is, yeah, I mean, 20 plus years. Talk a little bit about what his leadership has meant to you, and kind of how you run your program based on, certain, teaching aspects and things that was taught to you. Because even though it's different sports, it's
Yeah.
the same thing.
Yeah.
Relationships. You're dealing with people. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Man, I cannot overstate the impact Ben had on my life. Whether it was just acro or just more than that. I feel like all athletes have at least one coach, that you can think back to that really made that biggest impact on your life. And for me, it's probably Ben. Um, there's a lot that I take from how he ran acro, and implementing it into my style with the esports team. I feel like all coaches have, as you're building your own coaching style, you're taking pieces here and there from the other coaches you've been around with, right, and been involved with,
Hmm.
whether being under them as an assistant, but being under them as a player, or just kind of connecting with them. Um, and just the style of holding each other accountable has been really big in our program. And whether that's holding each other accountable to making sure that people are showing up to practice on time, or that people are playing outside of the game, right? Like for esports, if you're just playing the 2 hours in our practices that we have daily, there's going to be people who are putting in 4 or 6 hours a day just because you can, or there are going to be people doing better than you. Are we challenging each other outside of just the practice side? Whether it's just challenging each other, go to class. The esports program before I got here, unfortunately, just had some issues with grades, and I came in, and that's definitely turned around. We had I think a GPA of 2.9 or 3.0 as a team last year. And not really counting this year with COVID and everything, it's been very, very hard on a lot of my students. But we're definitely a lot better in that regards. So I've definitely taken the hold each other accountable, make sure we're trying to lift each other up to being the best we can be, not just inside of our practices, but outside of that as well. That's something that Coach Ben really, really instilled in me. I know esports is a lot different from acro, but there's a lot of similarities. One of the biggest is that, like, we're kind of the, how can I say, like, the non-traditional sport on both of our campuses, right? Like,
Sure.
you have,
Yeah.
yeah, acro at WAU, you have esports here, right? We're these sports that aren't necessarily your normal. We're a team, all we play against another team, right? And everybody's kind of aware of that. And that's something that's been really big, like the fact that we're both co-ed teams. I have right now 2 women on my team, and I'm working on getting more women into our program. And so there's a lot that I've taken from just kind of the style of acro, and implemented it to our program, and the fact of, like, Ben always made us feel like we're a part of athletics, and I was always appreciative of that. But I mean, at the same time, like, just our experience is a little bit different, right? And he tailored it toward that. And I've used that to kind of do the same with our team. Like, we're a part of athletics at Lourdes, but our experience is a little bit different, right? And how do we still relate to the athletics program as a whole? So I've taken a
Mm.
lot from him, whether just coaching style, whether just lifestyle. There's a lot of times where I'm doing something, and Coach Ben's words comes back into my mind, and I'm very appreciative of the 6 years I had to work with him and know him.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's I didn't even think about correlating it that way, just being, your non-traditional sports.
Yeah, yeah.
But certainly a huge addition, and adds value to the campus. So
Hmm.
yeah, thanks for that. So as far as now, let's transition to esports, kind of hearing about your time at Lourdes. Can you talk a little bit about your facilities, and then also your roster?
Got
Kind
it.
of share.
Yeah, so we're in a room in our athletics building. I would say about I'm trying to think size wise, is there any comparison? I can't think off the top of my head right now. Um, but we're in a room about a pretty good size. I think it's 900 square feet technically, if I'm thinking off the top of my head. Um, 25 computers in our we call it an arena per se. The 25 computers in it. Obviously with COVID, our capacity has been like half of that. We have to make sure people are spread out. Um, but we play on those computers. It's basically our competition space, but it's also our locker room. It's also our lounge area. It's like everything all in between, encompassing in that area. Um, the team is free to come in. Your ID card gets you access, and only people who
Wow.
are a part of the team or a coach gets access to being in going into there. So you just type your ID card anywhere from 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. The room is open for them to be able to use.
Wow.
The building itself closes at 11. We kind of pitched for us to get a little more time in there. And so if one of my players wants to come in and get some early morning time in, you just show up at 6 to scan in, and he can get in and get to work, so which is pretty awesome. So um, as far as our roster size, so we compete in 6 different titles at Lourdes Esports. Um, League of Legends, Overwatch, Rocket League, Super Smash Brothers, Fortnite, and Hearthstone. Um, all our competitive games, they're all titles that we compete against other schools in, and sometimes might play in some amateur tournaments as well. Our roster size is about 35 at this moment.
Wow.
Each game will have its own separate roster, and each game will compete completely individually of the other titles. So it's its own little mini athletic department um, within the grand athletic department, and we kind of run it like you would a track team per se, right? Where your sprinters would practice at one time, your throwers are practicing here, your distance practicing here. It's kind of the same way, where you're all kind of practicing at different times, but the 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 competitiveness and the goals of your Overwatch team is completely separate than your Rocket League team, and how your League of Legends team does is completely separate than how your Fortnite team does. So we're all just different teams altogether, and we're kind of just one big program and still one big family at the end of the day.
That's awesome. And you were talking about the different sports, or the different games under the esports
Mhm.
umbrella. Talk a little bit about what you've accomplished and what you and your team has accomplished for Lords, first time.
Yeah.
I'll kind of let you share a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you. So this past semester was a big success, especially for our League of Legends team. We won our conference title. We won the first League of Legends title in our conference. Great Lakes Esports Conference got started up last year. Uh, we did a year-round season, so esports is year-round. A year-round season, another thing like Acro. Um, and then, unfortunately, playoffs got canceled because of COVID. So we did we're doing 2 shortened seasons. So we did a fall season, completely separate than the spring season. League of Legends team went undefeated in the fall, only dropped 1 round. So our games are best out of 3. All the games except one were 2-0 sweeps. Won our conference championship. Huge shout out to them. Overwatch is the game I know the best by far. League of Legends, I'm still fairly new to them, so my student assistant helps me out a lot with that team. And my players are some very very talented players, and they put a lot of work in. My League of Legends team is by far one of my hardest working teams. So shout out to them. They played amazingly throughout the year. No matter what the opponent was, we went into it professionally. We scouted for each opponent coming up. So shout out to them. My Overwatch team, definitely were one of the best in the conference as well. Unfortunately, when playoffs came, uh, one of our starters had to be home for a funeral, unfortunately, and so it was a little bit tough. We had to have one of our freshmen in, and her first game playing with varsity had to be a playoff game. So it was a bit of a shock to her for that, but she played very very well. Shout out to her, but it came down to the wire. We ended up losing 3-2 in that series. But They did pretty well. My Hearthstone team also did very well. In the main national varsity tournament, we finished top 8 out of, I believe there's 45 schools. So we made it to the
Wow.
playoffs, finished top 8. So shouts out to them. And then Smash hasn't really competed much, particularly because Super Smash contests are always in person. Playing online is very,
Oh, okay.
very, very tough and not real big. It's not a real big favorite of people who play Smash. Our Rocket League team, it was their very first season this past semester. It's our first time having a Rocket League team. So there are some struggles. We lost a number of games. So you play best out of 5, lost a number of game 5s, but we're definitely looking at improving on that going forward. So and then our Fortnite team competed in a national tournament, finished top half in that, I believe. So. But I mean, definitely the hallmark of the fall season was our League of Legends championship, where now we're gonna have a trophy, we're gonna have a banner up in the gym. Like my kids are very
Wow,
excited about that. I
that's
think it's the
awesome.
first time the esports program is gonna have some like tangible hardware or proof of like the success that we've been able to have.
Man, that's awesome, man, and congrats on that. I know
Thank you.
it's no easy feat to accomplish something like that. So that's awesome that early on in your career you can you've been able to achieve some of these things.
Yeah.
So with that under your belt, what's next for the program? Like, kind of talk to us a little bit of how you were managing during the pandemic.
Mm.
What is your team doing right now?
So going forward next semester, we'll have our spring season for our conference. Um, the hope is that the pandemic kind of settles down and that we can do a year-round season again once we get to fall of 2021. But it's always our first goal to win our conference, and that'll definitely be the goal for our Overwatch team. Definitely will be the goal for our League of Legends team as well. Also with that, a lot of esports is mainly a spring sport. A lot of your big national tournaments are played in the spring. You'll have some national tournaments in the fall, but a lot of times they're kind of seen as like your preseason tournaments. They still count, but like most of the importance is put onto the spring. So all of our national tournaments will be hitting as well as far as additionally our conference tournaments. One thing in esports is our conference isn't linked to national tournaments; they're completely separate. There's no like NAI where you win your conference, you go to nationals. Like we don't have
Right.
that yet in esports. Hopefully we get there. Um, so that will be the things that we're looking forward in the spring is just the competition structure. Going forward outside of competing that I'm looking for the program, we're definitely still looking at improving. There are specific teams that I really want to build up and improve on. Also our space, I'm looking at putting together proposal for like how we can grow with the space we have, do some renovations in our esports arena. We're on year 4 of our computers, and in the gaming space that's a little bit old to not have made any upgrades. So we're hoping to look forward to making some additional changes in that. But a lot of stuff that we would have been able to looking to do is kind of travel stuff, and fortunately with COVID that's kind of shut a lot of it down. Esports we're definitely blessed to be able to compete online, but it's such a big experience when you're able to go in person and do some competitions in person. So looking forward, again, we're just trying to hit conference. Always winning conference is our first goal, and then doing very well when the national tournaments come around.
Nice. And so you're on slate to compete in the spring.
Yes.
Is that set in stone, or is it kind of up in the air right now?
So we should still be good to compete.
Okay.
Lourdes ended up having to shut down athletics. Uh, I think literally 2 days before our conference tournament, our conference finals actually. But we were still permitted to play, which I'm very blessed, very glad that we did because we got the conference championship out of it. But yeah, we're still slated to compete in the spring. We had a conference meeting earlier this week actually to discuss how we wanted to get the schedule set out, and all that. So very excited for that coming up next semester.
Okay. Awesome. And why don't you share with viewers? So say if some potential athletes or gamers, what do you is it what do
Yeah,
you
you
use
said
them
game.
for
Yeah,
that?
gamer's
Gamers,
good. Gamer's good. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
gamers
yeah,
good. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, yeah, scholar gamers. So we'll say that scholar gamers. You know, what are some of the things that you talk about during the recruiting process, and do you offer athletic scholarships?
Yeah, so we do offer athletic scholarships. We're pretty blessed with the ones we're able to offer. I think it's a cool thing to be able to tell someone who's very good in League of Legends or Overwatch, hey, we recognize your skill and we want to reward that going forward on your college experience. As far as recruiting, I'm not going to give all the secrets away, but I definitely one of the
Hmm.
big things that I mentioned to any recruits is the fact that I was a former college athlete. Um, right now, a lot of uh, esports directors or coaches per se out there um, either worked in professional esports or they worked in the amateur scene or they were professors before they worked in IT or like there's a number of different routes that people have come. But if you look at traditional sports, like 9 times out of 10, you're playing in college. Your coach also played that in college, right? I think the student athlete experience is one that's just so unique. I think what only like 7 or 8% of high school students end up being student athletes, and it's something that unless you've lived it, you don't fully understand it, right? And so I always
Right.
tell that to any recruit or even my current players, like anything you guys have gone through before, I've gone through it as a student athlete, and I can really relate to what you're going through. So there's a lot of times they ask me for advice, and I can look back to be like, oh yeah, I did this, or like, yeah, I failed a class before. Here's how I handled it. Yeah, I overslept through a final exam before. Here's how I handled it. Like, um,
Right.
I've made those mistakes as not only as a college student, but as a college athlete while still balancing traveling and practice and studying and games and all of that all together. So that's one of the biggest things I always touch on. As far as Lourdes goes, we have a beautiful campus. One of the cool things about our campus is that we ended up transitioning to a full-time university about 10 years ago. We were initially just a commuter school. So with that, they added day classes, they added athletics, and then they added dorms. But instead of like building new dorms, they bought out an apartment complex next door. So like all of our
Wow.
students live in an apartment style housing, which is actually pretty
Oh,
cool. Yeah, so they get that
whoa.
yeah, they get that experience of what it's like to live on their own while they're still in college. So by the time they graduate, they're already used to it, right? And so that's definitely a big benefit